Hi, and welcome. I'm going to do a vlog today about the O5 resistance group, which is the group that inspired Kitty Larsson's story. In Vienna, a group of artists, politicians, and former military advisors formed a resistance group called the O5. Why O5? The German Ö for Österreich, which is the umlaut O, this is the one with the O and the two dots above it, was then converted into the O and then the fifth letter in the alphabet, which is E. So if you had to spell out the umlaut O, it would be OE. And so they created O5 out of this, as the fifth letter of the alphabet is E. These people set up their base in one of the oldest churches in Vienna, if it's not the oldest church. And it was called, it was in Ruprechtsplatz 5. The name of the church is St. Ruprecht, of course, then. And these people were the ones who were located 2 blocks away from the Nazis' Gestapo headquarters, which was at Hotel Metropole. So in the Diplomat's Wife series, there's one big, scary place for Kitty, and that is the Hotel Metropole, the Gestapo headquarters, because Kitty's best friend dies there under interrogation. So this group was created by Hans Becker, who was an Austrian army officer, Alfons Stilfried, who was a German soldier, and a Catholic underground member called Fritz Molden. And Fritz Molden's story is loosely inspired my character Edgar Ragaz. It was a loose-knit group. It was not something that was super, super tight or very well organized in the beginning, but eventually it started to spread, and eventually to the point where it created an impact on the Gersthof parish in the 18th district of Vienna. Which then became the basis for the Cassia spy group. And the Cassia spy group is revealed in book 3 of the Diplomat's Wife series. This group, what they did was they helped Jews. They tried to get Jewish people out. They were hiding Jews. They managed to get forged identity cards and such, which is, if you read the first book in the Diplomat's Wife, is what Kitty is involved in when she joins the O5. In 1944, Molden used the forged papers to actually shuttle back and forth between Vienna and Bern, Switzerland. And in Bern, Switzerland is where he eventually took up contact with Alan Dulles, who was the OSS chief in Bern. He was the big spy ring master for the OSS in Switzerland. And it was with Dulles that Molden then made contact and convinced the OSS and the Allies to give them the finances they needed and the resources that they needed in order to continue their resistance movement. Now, my books don't go into that deep of historical detail, because the O5 was actually essentially broken up quite early. And so these little strands that were left over made sure that they tried to do some sabotage activity, would bring in maps. They brought in information about the factories and what sorts of armaments were being produced, pinpointing the infrastructure that needed to be destroyed by RAF bombers to really bring the Nazi regime down to their knees. What I'm finding interesting in all of this is, because I'm also writing a book about the Ukrainian war right now, are the exceptional parallels to what is happening in the Ukraine and Russian war, and what happened specifically in Vienna. There are so many parallels, right down to this Russian resistance group who then invaded Belgorod. And is trying to now to grab a hold on the most western parts of the borderlands between Russia and Ukraine. the western parts of Russia and the eastern parts of Ukraine. I mean, it's amazing. It takes such courage to stand up to something like this. We call them heroes. And recently I saw a film about, it was called Argentina 1985. And the protagonist in this film says, there are no such things as heroes. And I don't think there are. I think there are people who stand up against what is evil and what is bad, not with the intention of becoming a hero, but because that is what they honestly believe in, is that they must bring the people who are causing misery and suffering down to their knees. It is only after they are gone that we consider them heroes. And I think my stories, they try to bring the humanity back into this hero. Kitty Larsson's story takes her to a point where she has PTSD before it was even a term. And she doesn't know what to do with herself in book 3 anymore. She doesn't know, does she have the courage to go on? Can she go on? What is she going to do after the war? She's been living on adrenaline all of this time and terrified of everything. And this very real fear and these questions about how far do I really want to go? Am I really going to give up my life for this? Are plaguing her in this series throughout. She begins as a naive, feeling entitled, I'm going to save the world, to realizing how fragile her own humanity is. I think that's why the O5 resistance group really interested me. Besides the fact that we tend to hear a lot about the good guys and the bad guys, we tend to hear a lot about how history is written by the victors. And so we very rarely hear about all of the things that go on behind the scenes, the dilemmas that have to be solved, the discussions, the arguments. In book 1, I reveal not only the beginnings of the O5 resistance group in Vienna, people who knew what was happening was a terrible thing, that it was going to ruin the country, that it was genocide, what the Nazis were doing with the Jews. But also the questions that the politicians throughout the world were putting: should we support this? Should we not support this? Should we help the Jews? Should we not help the Jews? Whose political gain is this going to affect? It's something that we're seeing today, and I think it's terrible. I'm writing World War II stories. And I ask myself, as I'm watching Ukraine's war unfold, as of today, 494 days officially, although it started in 2014. So nearly 10 years, it's been 9.5 years. I ask myself, have we really learned something? When we swore that we would never do it again, then why are we allowing it to happen now? I'm shedding light on the few people who go up against Goliath. I'm shedding light on the few people who put together the O5 resistance group and gave courage to those who were perhaps sitting on the fence. People who stepped up and helped save humanity. I hope you enjoy the stories. Thank you for listening.